Night school.
Night school. How you doing?
I'm great, dude.
Good.
I haven't read this book in a long time. Excited to hear about it again.
I just read it for the first time recently. Today we're going to talk about The Four Agreements, a Toltec wisdom book, a practical guide to personal freedom by Don Miguel Ruiz. This book we both heard about for the first time from our mom, who read it long ago. That must have been like 15 years ago or something,
Yeah, at
right?
least.
Yeah. And I'd never gotten around to reading it, which was unfortunate because it's very short and very good. There's a lot of interesting stuff to dig into there. We decided to cover it on the show because of Mother's Day, which is now like over 2 weeks ago.
Right. And it was my idea to do books that she's been hounding us to read for years,
Mm-hmm.
inspired by Mother's Day, but you've followed through, and I have yet to.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's a Bible story about those two, how you're a better person.
Right. That's my interpretation. So, sorry, Mom, I'm finally reading it, and we're going to talk about it now. Don Miguel Ruiz is a member of the Toltec lineage of the Eagle Knights. It's like a lineage that's been going for, it's thousands of years. It's because they predate the Aztecs. The Toltecs are a group of, actually it describes them here. The Toltec were scientists and artists who formed a society to explore and conserve the spiritual knowledge and practices of the ancient ones. They came together as masters, naguals, that's the term they use for it, and students at Teotihuacan, the ancient city of pyramids outside Mexico City, known as the place where man becomes God. Over the millennia, the naguals were forced to conceal the ancestral wisdom and maintain its existence in obscurity. So it's an old lineage of shamans, it sounds like. A lot of it seems like they have a certain amount of interaction with spirits and with the truth of what's going on in the world and our role in it. He initially, so his father and all of his family have been members of that same lineage, and he initially resisted that, went into getting a medical degree. So he became a doctor, and then after that had a near-death experience that eventually led him on this path towards going back to what he was, I guess, born to be, what his family's always been born for.
Something about that's really interesting to me is that if you translated the role of shaman to like modern language, it's like, well, the shaman is a philosopher / doctor / teacher / all of these different things.
Yeah.
And he has actually managed to be like a lot of the core elements of a shaman in one person, even
Sure.
in modern times.
Sure.
It's pretty cool.
Typically, when I think of the term shaman, I think of someone who talks with spirits, but that is really such an avenue to so many other things. Because if you can communicate with things other than humans, there's other information out there. So I'm sure it kind of leads naturally to those things, and that word gets used for other things as well. But that's what I mean typically when I describe someone as a shaman, I guess. I will just touch on what the four agreements themselves are. The four agreements are a group of things that a group of rules that he thinks you should live your life by, that would, how he describes it mostly is lead you towards freedom, lead you away from the programming that the world has put on you, and free you from the expectations of other people, connect you more closely with nature and with God.
Do you think freedom is their version of liberation or salvation in like Buddhist or Christian terms?
Very possibly.
Okay.
When they say freedom, yeah, they're talking about freedom from your bad programming or your the bad things that you've agreed to, that the world has kind of made you agree to in order to function in the world.
That's a really interesting way to think about that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So freedom from that, and freedom from, what's the term? Well, he refers to it as the parasite, and that is just more a collection of several ideas that I'll go over in more detail here. But I think it's very similar to the idea of the pain body as expressed by Eckhart Tolle, like just all the negativity in you that wants to feed on more negativity and like kind of takes over you in your weak moments in order to feed on more negativity of whatever kind it wants.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool.
First agreement is be impeccable with your word. Speak with integrity. Say only what you mean. Avoid using the word to speak against yourself or to gossip about others. Use the power of your word in the direction of truth and love. Second agreement is don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. When you are immune to the opinions and actions of others, you won't be the victim of needless suffering. Don't make assumptions. Find the courage to ask questions and to express what you really want. Communicate with others as clearly as you can to avoid misunderstandings, sadness, and drama. With just this one agreement, you can completely transform your life. And always do your best. Your best is going to change from moment to moment. It will be different when you are healthy as opposed to sick. Under any circumstances, simply do your best, and you will avoid self-judgment, self-abuse, and regret. That's just the cover version of the main 4 agreements that we're going to talk about here.
Could you read through the 4, just the 4 without the descriptions?
Number 1, be impeccable with your word. Number 2, don't take anything personally. Number 3, don't make assumptions. Number 4, always do your best.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah. So I think the best way to approach this, I've got a bunch of spots like that I've highlighted here. I want to read off some sections and then we can discuss those. Cool. And he is referring here to the process by which we go through becoming less free and agreeing to things that are not good for us. I call this process the domestication of humans, and through this domestication, we learn how to live and how to dream. In human domestication, the information from the outside dream is conveyed to the inside dream, creating our whole belief system. I want to step back here to address what he says by dream. What he feels is that people are all always dreaming, and that what we are projecting onto the world our own version of how we want to see it. Actually, I skipped one section that will illuminate that a little bit better. He tells a story of when he was having like a real spiritual awakening. It's a very much like a realization moment, a one with God kind of moment where he realizes while looking at the stars that we're made of the same stuff as that. And then he realizes that everything is God and that everyone is God. And he feels wide-eyed and wildly happy about that and wants to tell everyone about it. And so I'm skipping over the whole story of kind of how he got to that point because we've heard very similar stories to that many times. Mm-hmm. He could understand, and this is not a story about Don. This is a story that was told to him by his father as more of like a parable, I believe.
Cool.
He could understand everyone very well, but no one could understand him. They believed that he was an incarnation of God, and he smiled when he heard this, and he said, "It is true, I am God, but you are also God. We are the same, you and I. We are images of light. We are God." But still the people didn't understand him. He had discovered that he was a mirror for the rest of the people, a mirror in which he could see himself. Everyone is a mirror, he said. He saw himself in everyone, but nobody saw him as themselves. And he realized that everyone was dreaming, but without awareness, without knowing what they really are. They couldn't see him as themselves because there was a wall of fog or smoke between the mirrors, and that wall of fog was made by the interpretation of images of light, the dream of humans. Then he knew that he would soon forget all that he had learned. He wanted to remember all the visions he had had, so he decided to call himself the smoky mirror so that he would always know that matter is a mirror and the smoke in between is what keep us from knowing what we are. He said, "I am the smoky mirror because I am looking at myself in all of you, but we don't recognize each other because of the smoke in between us. That smoke is the dream and the mirror is you, the dreamer." I really enjoyed that take on what I thought was really interesting about that was the idea that he realized that he was going to fall back asleep. That like you can have those sort of awakening moments and then you can kind of fall back asleep after that. And he gave himself a different name to remind himself of how important it was to him at that time.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So it was the name serves as a reminder to help him get back to that point should he fall asleep, like he can see that all of his friends are sleeping.
I wonder, our kind of a synchronicity here. Our mom, when she had finished up a divorce, I don't remember exactly the details, and she had the opportunity to change her name. And instead of changing it back to her maiden name, she decided to essentially make up a new name using a Native American ritual. I don't remember what tribe she got it from or whatever, but she decided to name herself after the first thing that she saw. She walked out of this place and she looked in a puddle and saw the sky in it, and she liked the name Carolyn Sky. So that's her name. And I want to ask her if there was a connection there, like similar to what you said. Was there something she saw or felt in that moment that she wanted to use that new name to signify? Was there a peace or freedom that she felt in that moment that she wanted to remind herself of? Like, I'm going to put sky in my name, and whenever I don't feel this peace or this freedom or this anymore, I can look at the sky. I wonder if there was something like that for her.
There could be. And she did see the sky in a mirror, and it was probably smoky around her at the time. Newport smoke.
Hey, Evan, would you mind opening that door? I think it might cool it down.
A little bit. So back to the other quote that I was going to read. I call this process the domestication of humans. And through this domestication, we learn how to live and how to dream. In human domestication, the information from the outside dream is conveyed to the inside dream, creating our whole belief system. First, the child is taught the names of things: mom, dad, milk, bottle. Day by day, at home, at school, at church, and from television, we are told how to live, what kind of behavior is acceptable. The outside dream teaches us how to be a human. We have a whole concept of what a woman is and what a man is, and we also learn to judge. We judge ourselves, judge other people, judge the neighbors. The belief system is like a book of law that rules our mind. Without question, whatever is in that book of law is our truth. We base all of our judgments according to the book of law, even if these judgments go against our own inner nature. Even moral laws like the Ten Commandments are programmed into our mind in the process of domestication. One by one, all these agreements go into the book of law, and these agreements rule our dream. There is something in our minds that judges everybody and everything, including the weather, the dog, the cat, everything. The inner judge uses what is in our book of law to judge everything we do and don't do, everything we think and don't think, and everything we feel and don't feel. There is another part of us that receives the judgments, and this part is called the victim. The victim carries the blame, the guilt, and the shame. It is the part of us that says, "Poor me, I'm not good enough, I'm not intelligent enough, I'm not attractive enough, I'm not worthy of love, poor me." The big judge agrees and says, "Yes, you are not good enough." And this is all based on a belief system that we never chose to believe. These beliefs are so strong that even years later, when we are exposed to new concepts and try to make our own decisions, we find that these beliefs still control our lives. So what he refers to as the parasite, he kind of breaks up into three different parts, and that's the judge, the victim, and the belief system. The belief system, at least in a negative sense, that if you, as most people do, have a bunch of negative beliefs that aren't good for you and that you live by anyway. And the judge is the one that shits on people, and the victim is the one that gets shit on. And a lot of times it's your judge and your victim. It's your judge that's hurting your victim. And it's all part of you, and it's all just this negative mass that ends up kind of taking over you. And that's how he describes it typically.
It's like the opposite of the Trinity. Like the Trinity is like, here's three elements of the divine that support one another. Yeah. And this is like, here's three elements of the negativity, and it's a negative feedback loop that reinforces itself.
Yeah. They just all reinforce each other. Just as the government has a book of laws that rule the society's dream, our belief system is the book of laws that rules our personal dream. All these laws exist in our mind. We believe them, and the judge inside us bases everything on these rules. The judge decrees, and the victim suffers the guilt and punishment. But who says there is no justice in this dream? True justice is paying only once for each mistake. True injustice is paying more than once for each mistake. And that is, I think that's, I guess, a thought I haven't heard enough. I'm sure I've heard it before, but it is interesting how when somebody does a bad thing, they don't just feel guilt over it and then it goes away. Mm-hmm. Like, they'll hold on to that for a long time. Well, I don't know. Some people hold on to guilt for a long time. Some people don't, I guess. But it's more just if you just feel guilty about it for a second and then forgive yourself and move on.
Right.
Yeah.
Better for everyone.
Better for everyone. Yeah. To be alive is the biggest fear humans have. Death is not the biggest fear we have. Our biggest fear is taking the risk to be alive. The risk to be alive and express what we really are. Just being ourselves is the biggest fear of humans. We have learned to live our lives trying to satisfy other people's demands. We have learned to live by other people's points of view because of the fear of not being accepted and of not being good enough for someone else. These bits that I'm reading right now are all from like the introductory chapter before it gets into the rules proper. So I'll tell you when we get into we're at the first rule now.
Well, you fulfilled your promise, though. You did tell me.
I did.
Dude, that door opens so much better. I love it.
It is much cooler. I would have been drenched by the end of this episode. The first agreement, be impeccable with your word. Why your word? Your word is the power that you have to create. Your word is the gift that comes directly from God. The Gospel of John in the Bible, speaking of the creation of the universe, says, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word is God." Through the Word, you express your creative power. It is through the Word that you manifest everything. Regardless of what language you speak, your intent manifests through the Word. What you dream, what you feel, what you really are, will all be manifested through the Word. I think that's there's your word in the next bit here. Your word is pure magic, and misuse of your word is black magic. I like that depiction of your word, because when you hear your word, it typically means like do what you say, like you will do what you say you're gonna do. Mm-hmm. But he is referring to word kind of more broadly than that, in that like all your words have power to build people up or to stop things from happening or to make things happen. That like it's a very powerful thing that it isn't just something you follow through on, but it's also something that has an immense amount of power behind it, especially if you use it carefully. Mm-hmm. I suppose if you use your word a lot and are constantly telling people to do things or telling people to stop doing things, that it becomes less useful. Or becomes less valuable if you use it more. But yeah, I like that depiction of your word.
Yeah, me too. It actually made me feel different about magic too, because I'm like, you know what? We all do magic.
Yeah, I think that there's some truth to that, and I don't know how literal it is, but it feels at least a little bit literal to me. That like if you say something in the right tone, it might just happen. Like people with no authority over a situation can just take control of a situation if their word is strong enough that everybody in the situation believes them and decides that like, yeah, that does sound like a good idea. And just the delivery of that can be enough to make that happen. Yeah. And that does feel a lot like magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chris Langen's theory, what's it called again?
CTMU.
Yeah, the cognitive theoretical model of the universe. Yep. So that's a theory of everything that aims to integrate different theories in physics and
mysticism.
Yeah, and mystical experiences and psychology and all these different things like
quantum physics, all that.
Yeah, this guy has the highest recorded IQ in the U.S. and he's made this theory and he's tried to explain the world in a comprehensive way. And according to him, the whole universe is constructed of energy and information. And one of the things that clicked for me when he said that was that the most efficient means of creation I have, and by creation I mean changing or impacting the world, is through speech, because that's the most efficient way I can generate energy and information. Like,
interesting. He said that?
well, he didn't say that about speech necessarily.
Okay.
I don't know if he did or not. That's
Okay.
just it's something that I thought about when he said that, was like, if the universe is made of energy and information, then my most creative act in the world, the act that I do that has the most impact on the world, is speech. Because, like, well, I mean, especially information. How else do you, Raleigh Rabarski, put information into the world besides with speech? I mean, you could count writing.
I would count. I mean, I suppose if I'm being, I suppose I might count anything. I might count like I turned this paper over. Like, that's new information in the world.
It is.
That, like, this paper is turned over.
Right. It is.
Yeah.
But the energy, the way that we, of all our ways of generating energy and information, or contributing energy and information to the world, the one that has the most drastic and immediate impact on other people, for sure, is speech.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
So
Definitely. Like, doing anything physical could not as quickly affect a large group of people as words. I think.
Right.
Yeah. Now, let us see what the word impeccability means. Impeccability means without sin. Impeccable comes from the Latin peccatus, which means sin. The im in impeccable means without. So impeccable means without sin. Religions talk about sin and sinners, but let's understand what it really means to sin. A sin is anything that you do which goes against yourself. Everything you feel or believe or say that goes against yourself is a sin. You go against yourself when you judge or blame yourself for anything. Being without sin is exactly the opposite. Being impeccable is not going against yourself. When you are impeccable, you take responsibility for your actions, but you do not judge or blame yourself. I really enjoy, like, sort of what's the word? Etymology, I think, when you're like breaking down the origins of a word and like breaking down exactly what it means. I think that's really interesting, and impeccable isn't a word that people use all that much. I thought that was a fun thing to highlight.
That is interesting that impeccable means sinless.
Yeah, without sin. Because we've talked about the origin of sin, the word sin, I think, on the podcast before, too.
Yeah, like the Greek origins like related to archery. It means missing the mark.
Right.
But I don't know how complete his definition sounds to me of sin. Like, it's going against yourself. But to me, it seems like sinless behavior is doing that which is right for you and others and all, which is like a super narrow range of speech and behavior. So it's a near impossible. That's why I like pointing out that it means miss the mark. It's like miss the bullseye. It's like, so hitting the bullseye is when you say or do something that perfectly benefits you, everyone around you, and everyone in general. It benefits you, the community, and the whole world. So it's a bullseye, and anything else just misses the mark. And so it's not like, oh, you sinned, that's a mark against you. It's like, oh, you missed. Like, most people do miss most of the time. But I don't know. The definition sounds clunky to me. It's something when you go against yourself.
You know what? I kind of agree. And I imagine that there's maybe more to it, that like there is more that could have been said that would make a little bit more sense to us. Why it means missing, but it also means going against yourself.
Well, but the ultimate definition of yourself is the same as the definition of, like, everybody is the universe, you know? So for anybody to go against themselves does mean to go against the universe, because everyone is made of the universe. And this book has already pointed that out in the introduction. Like, it's appropriate for anyone to say, I am God, because we are all that.
Right. And so if we accept that, then you add that to missing. It's like anything that doesn't benefit you, the universe, is a miss.
Yeah.
If you accept his premise that we're all God.
And in that sense, he is saying the same thing as me.
Yeah. Huh. Mostly we use the word to spread our personal poison, to express anger, jealousy, envy, and hate. The word is pure magic, the most powerful gift we have as humans, and we use it against ourselves. And then here's sort of an example of that. There was a woman, for example, who was intelligent and had a very good heart. She had a daughter whom she adored and loved very much. One night she came home from a very bad day at work, tired, full of emotional tension, and with a terrible headache. She wanted peace and quiet, but her daughter was singing and jumping happily. The daughter was unaware of how her mother was feeling. She was in her own world, in her own dream. She felt so wonderful, and she was jumping up and singing louder and louder, expressing her joy and her love. She was singing so loud that it made her mother's headache even worse, and at a certain moment, the mother lost control. Angrily, she looked at her beautiful little girl and said, "Shut up. You have an ugly voice. Can you just shut up?" The truth is that the mother's tolerance for any noise was non-existent. It was not that the little girl's voice was ugly, but the daughter believed what her mother said, and in that moment she made an agreement with herself. After that, she no longer sang, because she believed her voice was ugly and would bother anyone who heard it. This little girl grew up, and even though she had a beautiful voice, she never sang again. She developed a whole complex from one spell. This spell was cast upon her by the one who loved her the most, her own mother. Her mother didn't notice what she did with her word. She didn't notice that she used black magic and put a spell on her daughter. She didn't know the power of her word, and therefore she isn't to blame. She did what her own mother, father, and others had done to her in many ways. They misused the word. I thought that was just an interesting, example that is relatable to everybody. Everybody's been told something that really stuck with them.
And said something that every time you think... I was just thinking about one the other day. Our friend Willie, who watches this podcast, so he'll probably hear this, came down to support an event, and I insulted him for what he ordered over dinner. I was just trying to joke around. I was super nervous because he had come down a long ways, and I made fun of him for what he ordered. He was like, "Are you kidding me, young man? You know how far I drove out here to meet you, and you insult me at our first meeting? What's wrong with you?" And I was like, oh my God. So, and I was thinking about it the other day, and I got embarrassed. It was probably 6 years ago.
Yeah.
So I can remember things people said to me that stuck, but I also remember things that I said where I misused the word. And years later, I'm like, every time I remember.
And there's probably a bunch that I've said to people that I was so thoughtlessly selfish in the moment that I wasn't considering at all that I was doing something to them that this might stick with them. There's ones that I won't know until after I'm dead probably, and then I'll hear I ruined that person's life. I ruined everything for him.
Right.
Gossip is black magic at its very worst because it is pure poison. We learned how to gossip by agreement. When we were children, we heard the adults around us gossiping all the time, openly giving their opinions about other people. They even had opinions about people they didn't know. Emotional poison was transferred along with the opinions, and we learned this as a normal way to communicate. Gossiping has become the main form of communication in human society. It has become the way we feel close to each other because it makes us feel better to see someone else feel as badly as we do. Since I read this, gossip, I think, is the topic that's been on my mind the most. Gossip is so, and let's say by gossip, I mean just talking about other people that aren't there. It can be so fun.
Right.
It can be fun. And
we did it on the way into this podcast. While walking up the stairs to come here, we made fun of things that people said that we thought were stupid.
Yeah.
Over the past week. Hey, tell me who did something stupid this week? Yeah. That's how we catch up and laugh. And it was funny. We laughed.
It is. Yeah. It's such it's almost like it's so fun and light sometimes that it's hard to even totally accept that it's a completely bad thing. Because what do people talk about if gossiping is not on the table at all? I don't.
Probably something really meaningful.
Talk about God? Yeah, I guess we talk about God. That's about
it's pretty much God or gossip.
Things. Talk about things, but not the people that made them.
Well,
not the people that made the things.
I could picture a group of really wholesome, calm, grounded people sitting down for dinner and just really peacefully, politely catching up about all their lives in a really loving and considerate way. I can picture that. Not exactly the conversation that I'm used to cultivating. I like to make fun of things. I love to make fun of things.
It's so fun.
But we are a particularly cynical group. Us and our friends.
Yeah. I mean, we're particularly mocky. I don't know. I don't feel that cynical. I feel a little bit cynical, but
cynical.
I'm also
Here's an example of what I mean by cynical. We watched Star Wars the other day. We all made fun of it while we watched it.
I also liked it, but
yeah. Oh yeah, it was fine.
Yeah,
I like to watch something and I like to make fun of it.
We're critical.
When I
pretty critical.
Yeah, but cynical we walk in here and we make fun of like the paper from the because we film this in a church and we'll pick up the video where they do the intro and just kind of like burp, 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 burp,
just
burp.
riff on it.
Yeah, just kind of riff.
Yeah,
it's he's just riffing. So
he's just riffing about it.
It doesn't really feel negative. It just feels like we're doing a goof, but I think it is negative
because someone is the victim of it.
Right.
The person that wrote the paper is the victim of it.
Right.
And they're not here, so that kind of feels fine. But then that does change the way that you... I guess a really negative thing about it is that it then changes the way that you interact with that person going forward.
Very subtly, it does.
If I meet the person that wrote that paper, I remember that I mocked the paper. Or if I know the person that made the paper and you don't know the person that made the paper and I goof about the person, then it colors your impression of them and you can't develop a relationship with them that isn't tainted by my negative perception.
Yes, I agree.
Or just mocking perception, not even necessarily negative, but just, I don't know. I guess mocking is negative.
Well, I've had a question I've been working on for a while that I haven't found an answer to, but I just kind of mull it over, and I think I'll stumble into an answer soon. The question is there a difference between having discernment, which is the ability to recognize what's right and what isn't,
mm-hmm.
and being judgmental, which is making determinations as to what's right and what isn't? Is there a such thing as having discernment without having judgment? So I'm just throwing it out there. I'd like an answer to that question. I think I'll find one.
Yeah, maybe discernment is not... Maybe the view of discernment shouldn't be it's to determine what's good and what's bad or what's right and what's wrong. Maybe it should just be like discernment is to totally understand something, to totally understand an idea or a thing or a person, that your discernment should just be... Because good and bad, right and wrong, they come from a perspective. Like there's a point that you're at, and from your perspective, something could be good that is bad objectively from another perspective.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you just have to separate good and bad from the discernment thing, and just maybe make it like discernment is completely understanding all facets of something, or like being able to see something from 360 degrees, like from every angle. Maybe it's like that.
But I think so. Here's an example. In Buddhism, you're not supposed to make judgments, but you're supposed to act in the way that's right, speak in the way that's right, behave in the way that's right, intend in the way that's right, meditate in the way that's right, etc. So you have to decide what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah.
And you have to look to examples, like have a couple meditation teachers you've gone to and you decide to go with one over the other because it feels like it more rightly or more it does a better job of bringing you to the true experience that you're looking for in meditation. So you decide to go with that one instead of that one. Mm-hmm. So you're saying that one's more right than that one. So that's an example of discernment, deciding which way to go. One of them's more right than the other. Is it possible to do that without judging? Is judging not the issue? Is condemnation based on judgment the issue? And then in the New Testament, there's, hey, the more you judge, the more you get judged. So if you don't want to be judged, if you want grace, give it out. Don't judge anything and you won't be judged. Jesus is advocating for a kind of karma like that.
Yeah.
But then he also says that one of the abilities that you'll naturally have if you're aligned with reality in the right way, which in Christian terms is called possessing the Holy Spirit or being possessed by the Holy Spirit, then one of the abilities you might have is the ability of discernment, mm-hmm. which is the ability to recognize what's right and what isn't. But maybe there's a such thing as judging, determining what's right or what isn't without judging, without condemning. Maybe the condemnation is the issue. Maybe that's what they mean by judgment. Discerning and then condemning what you've deemed wrong.
Right, like it becomes judgment. It becomes problematically judgmental when you're then projecting negativity at something you decided is bad.
Because that's a kind of psychic curse, right? To even condemn
Yeah.
something in your head is a kind of psychic curse.
So maybe you should judge things, but only if you're going to judge them positively.
No, maybe you should judge what's right or wrong, but instead of aiming anything negative at what you deem wrong, you should only aim positive at what you deem right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you should judge in the sense that you should decide what's right or wrong, but you should never poison what you don't like. You should only water what you do like. That could make sense, because Jesus also said, don't resist evil, but do what is good.
Don't resist evil.
Yeah, that's one of the weirdest lines in the New Testament.
Line.
Do not resist evil.
Maybe if you have, maybe the trick is that if you have real discernment, you see that everything is okay. That like you actually get to a point where you don't really judge anything, and that's real discernment. That like, oh, this is all just the world happening, and from my discerning perspective, it's all cool now. Maybe it's like that. But it is a really complicated question.
Yeah.
How can I be a good person without being somewhat judgmental? Because otherwise, how can I got to get rid of the bad in me, and I got to call out the bad in the world. It seems like that's probably not exactly true.
Maybe you should
really
judge,
tough.
but you should only judge for the sake of acting or speaking or intending, as in you should only judge your own conduct. You shouldn't judge the conduct of others. Maybe it's something like that.
That seems better. Yeah.
Or it could be both. It could be like the two theories. It's about supporting what you like, but never, it's about watering what you like, but never poisoning what you dislike. And it's also about judging your own conduct, not the conduct of others. So even in judging yourself, you should never poison what you hate. You should only support what you love. But yeah, I'm not expecting an answer.
Yeah.
Just throwing the question out there.
We
don't have to answer it all the way, but you definitely help me get closer. So thanks.
Mm-hmm. Impeccability of the word will also give you immunity from anyone putting a negative spell on you. You will only receive a negative idea if your mind is fertile ground for that idea. When you become impeccable with your word, your mind is no longer fertile ground for words that come from black magic. Instead, it is fertile for the words that come from love. You can measure the impeccability of your word by your level of self-love. How much you love yourself and how you feel about yourself are directly proportionate to the quality and integrity of your word. When you are impeccable with your word, you feel good, you feel happy, and at peace.
Interesting.
What I found really interesting about that was it reminded me of the idea, which you'll have to remind me what the origin of this is, but the idea that a man of God is immune to poison. What's that from?
That is from the last book in the... No... I think it's from the book of Acts, the 5th book of the New Testament.
Okay.
I think it's from the end of Acts. It is said that you will recognize prophets because poison won't hurt them. I don't remember why exactly it said that. But it could have meant linguistic poison or chemical poison or psychic poison. It could mean all of those different levels, because I could poison you with... this is a weird tangent, but I was just reading this book called Christian Counseling and the Occult, and he was talking about how people poison each other with thoughts, like magic, psychic shit. Mm-hmm. So you could poison somebody's thoughts or intentions, or you could poison somebody's at the level of speech by saying something poison, or you could poison someone with chemicals, or you could poison someone physically by physically hurting them. Like poison to sabotage a system could be done on many different levels, and so it might mean you can't be poisoned on any level.
Yeah, and this is crazy speculative, but it is possible even that what was said in Acts more directly translated to something like dark magic, but that was a little bit too weird, and it got translated over time to just poison. That was a more tolerable way to see it.
The book of Acts is actually the book in the New Testament that has the most direct, explicit references to magic.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's a magician named Simon who runs into, I believe it was Paul.
Simon Magus, I believe, yeah?
Oh, interesting. Oh, I didn't know.
Or Magus.
And he, does that have a connection with Magus of Java, the book that you covered by Dan?
Only that I think the word, that the term Magus, either Magus means mage in some way, or maybe mage comes from that origin. I'm pretty sure they just both have a similar root to mage, and that's the only connection.
And mage means what?
Oh, like a magic user.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, yeah, there's a magician, and he met Paul, and he was impressed by Paul's magic, and it's like, hey, I want your magic instead of mine. Can I buy it? And he's like, no, you have to surrender to blah, blah, blah. Here's how you really be able to do what you call magic, what we do that isn't magic, that's actually perfectly natural because we're aligned with the... So he basically schooled this magician, and the magician gave his life to Christ, is how the story goes. So because the book of Acts has probably the most magic of any book in the New Testament, it very well could refer to that.
Maybe. Yeah. But yeah, that was kind of an interesting parallel. And I like the idea that if you just are never telling lies or using your word for your own gain, God, telling a lie is so much like it does feel so much like a spell. Like you're trying to change other people's perception of what really is, of like what the world you live in is when you tell a lie. But if you're not telling lies and you're not ever using your word for any personal gain, only using it to uplift and say things that are true and loving, that you can't get fucked with by lies or by other people's negativity, because like you've already conquered that. So you can see how obvious it is that that's just a projection of their own shit and has nothing to do with you, and it can't affect you.
Right.
I like that idea.
And that also sounds like a really fair, if the way that the universe works is you can absolutely lie if you want to, but then you're vulnerable to the curses that come along with lies. Mm-hmm. But if you choose not to lie, then you're not vulnerable to them. So it's like you can, it's like if, like, let's say you're at a birthday party and there's a dodgeball game going on. Kid gets hit with the ball. He says, "You can't hit me. I'm not playing." You know, that's like what lying is. It's like, you can't lie to me. I'm not playing. Like I don't enter the game of lying. Mm-hmm. Like I don't enter that. So don't throw lies at me because I don't play. Like if I want to step into that game, I can throw dodgeballs at you and you can throw dodgeballs at me. Mm-hmm. Or in the example inspired by the book, I can lie to people all I want, but then I'm also vulnerable to lies. Or you can transcend that game and choose not to play that game. You don't get the benefits of lying and you don't get the risks of lying. Yeah. If that's the way that it works, that sounds really fair to me.
I would like it if it does. Yeah. It sounds very karmic too.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so we're on to the second agreement now. Don't take anything personally. If someone gives you an opinion...
Are you saying I do normally?
No, you don't, dude. You don't. If someone gives you an opinion and says, "Hey, you look fat," don't take it personally, because the truth is that this person is dealing with his or her own feelings, beliefs, and opinions. That person tried to send poison to you, and if you take it personally, then you take that poison and it becomes yours. Taking things personally makes you easy prey for these predators, the black magicians. They can hook you easily with one little opinion and feed you whatever poison they want, and because you take it personally, you eat it up. You eat all their emotional garbage, and now it becomes your garbage. But if you do not take it personally, you are immune in the middle of hell. Immunity to poison in the middle of hell is the gift of this agreement.
Immunity to poison in the middle of hell is the gift of this agreement?
Of this agreement.
So no matter where you are, you're immune if you don't take anything personally.
Right. And I should back up a little bit because he did address hell and heaven, and how he essentially feels that because we are all active participants in creating the dream that we as a whole planet or we as a species exist in can cause heaven or hell to exist. That heaven and hell are states of our world, not other planes of existence or something like that. So when he says hell there, he thinks that we live in hell now.
There's another door to the roof.
Oh, okay. All right.
Our friend Evan just walked in and door the confused Raleigh. That's what that was.
Nothing other people do is because of you. It is because of themselves. All people live in their own dream, in their own mind. They are in a completely different world from the one we live in. When we take something personally, we make the assumption that they know what is in our world, and we try to impose our world on their world. That's very true. People assume that other people have the information that they have, or that they are thinking about things in the same way, People, sometimes it's even as simple as like people just assume that everybody else should have the basic knowledge that they were taught as a kid. Like,
right. Well, it's common sense.
it's common sense. Everyone learned that when they were 6 from my dad.
Right.
It is not important to me what you think about me, and I don't take what you think personally. I don't take it personally when people say, Miguel, you are the best. And I also don't take it personally when they say, Miguel, you are the worst. I know that when you are happy, you will tell me, Miguel, you are such an angel. But when you are mad at me, you will say, oh, Miguel, you're such a devil. You are so disgusting. How can you say those things? Either way, it does not affect me because I know what I am. And that, I think, is a really interesting, like, sort of wrinkle to this don't take anything personally thing. It also means positive. It also means, like, don't even take compliments all that seriously. Because the truth is that person doesn't know everything about you.
Right.
They have a perception of you that exists in their world, but it's not complete. They don't know everything about how you work, and you have to believe what you are. And if they say something nice, you can say thank you, but, like, don't actually take it to heart because you should know what you are anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
I just mentioned that about Justin Frick in the last episode, our friend who's a videographer.
Right.
When people compliment him, he's like, cool,
Right.
I do what I do.
Yeah.
I don't think he gets insulted often, but I'm sure that he doesn't take that personally either.
Definitely not. Yeah. Whatever people feel, do, think, or say, don't take it personally. If they tell you how wonderful you are, they are not saying that because of you. You know you are wonderful. It is not necessary to believe other people who tell you that you are wonderful. Don't take anything personally. Even if someone got a gun and shot you in the head, it was nothing personal, even at that extreme. I really like that.
Facts.
Even if someone straight up murders you because they hate you, it's got nothing to do with you.
Right.
It's got something to do with what they perceive you to be in their fake world they're living in their dream. Yeah. Even if others lie to you, it is okay. They are lying to you because they are afraid. They are afraid you will discover that they are not perfect. It is painful to take that social mask off. If others say one thing but do another, you are lying to yourself if you don't listen to their actions. But if you are truthful with yourself, you will save yourself a lot of emotional pain. Telling yourself the truth about it may hurt, but you don't need to be attached to the pain. Healing is on the way, and it's just a matter of time before things will be better for you. Just by practicing this second agreement, you begin to break dozens of teeny tiny agreements that cause you to suffer. And if you practice the first two agreements, you'll break 75% of the teeny tiny agreements that keep you trapped in hell. So as he presents these, he presents them in a specific order that is meant to build on each of them. And he does consider the first one, be impeccable with your word, to be the most important one. And the last one to be one that is more supportive of the previous three. Yeah.
Speech is considered fundamental, and that like in at the beginning of the, I guess it's not the beginning of the New Testament, the beginning of the book of John. It's references Jesus / God being the Word. And the Constitution, the first one is anyone can say whatever they want. There's something really fundamental about the word. And in Don's system too, he's saying the first thing that you need to establish is speak without error.
Right. Yeah, I guess it's because your speech is what we can most closely, physically, how we can most closely physically describe your thoughts. That, like, you should have autonomy over your thoughts.
Oh, like it's the most immediately evident fruit of your character. Is that what you're getting at?
I'm thinking of your. I guess I feel like I like thoughts better. That like you shouldn't let other people think for you. That you should have the ability to think for yourself and express what you really think, and that speech is the most physical evidence of that. Like that's your expression.
Oh, are you referring to the First
what's
Amendment?
Inside you. Well, no, I guess I sort of am because you just did. Like, but I'm not trying to zoom in on that part specifically, but just commenting on like how important speech is and what is it about speech that's so important. It's because you have things going on inside your head. There's thoughts going on inside your head, or I guess just thoughts and when they come out, it's speech, or I guess your word is a better way to put it, because that also encompasses written word as well. But yeah, it's like the closest way. It's the closest to the root, the closest we can get to the root to say you can think whatever you want to think, is you can express whatever you want to express.
Yeah.
Like, that's very important.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. All right, we're on to the third agreement now. Don't make assumptions. We have the tendency to make assumptions about everything. The problem with making assumptions is that we believe they are the truth. We could swear they're real. We make assumptions about what others are doing or thinking. We take it personally. Then we blame them and react by spending emotional poison with our word. That is why whenever we make assumptions, we're asking for problems. We make an assumption, we misunderstand, we take it personally, and we end up creating a whole big drama for nothing. It is always better to ask questions than to make an assumption, because assumptions set us up for suffering. I think it's a big problem in the world that everybody just kind of assumes, I guess, the things that they have to do, or that, like, how rarely people are willing to break a tiny rule or do something that is just like socially odd or embarrassing in any way.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was thinking about this rule, I was just thinking about how I think it's an important way. It's like an important thing to help wake people up from their dream, to just remind them that, like, hey, this is an option too. Like, you can just walk straight up to this person and ask them the question that everybody's wondering. Or
that's what Socrates did.
Hmm?
He like played the jester by walking around the marketplace kind of sarcastically asking people outrageous philosophical questions.
Oh, I've never heard this.
Yeah.
That's interesting. But I think that that's like an important thing in kind of waking people up, like a reminder. Yeah, you can say whatever you want to. You can say whatever words you want to say right now,
right?
Or you can do whatever you want to do right now. That you don't have to live within what it seems like the boundaries that everyone else, the boundaries that everyone else is living in. You don't have to live in that, and not even just in big ways, but in like you can go for a walk anytime. You don't have to wear shoes. Just like silly little things. You can do whatever you want to do.
Right.
Actually, one thing I thought of was like an example I thought of was like you doing a comedy show. Like you just decided to do that, and then like a month later it happened, and it just kind of. I thought of that as like an example of like something just showing people like, hey, this is an option too. Like,
yeah.
Are you interested in comedy? You can just throw a comedy show. Just like find the people, ask them a question, and it just happens.
Right.
And people need to be more. I think people need to be more open-minded about the possibilities of just what you can do in the world, even in small little things. You're allowed to sing at the grocery store or do a cartwheel wherever you are. Right. Whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
You could even do like a front handspring at Walmart if you were able.
I could, yeah. I mean, that's tough because it's not for everyone.
Old bitter inside joke. Raleigh, he used to have this delusion that he could do a front handspring.
I've done a ton of front handsprings. I've done a ton of them.
Not at the store.
I've never done one at the store.
What? I thought you had. I was doing a bit.
I don't think I've ever actually done one at the store successfully. I tried like twice.
That's funny.
But it's scary.
But, you know, I want to mention that a lot of the reason that people don't do random outside of the box things is because of the way that education is structured. Because public education is structured in a way that they just kind of sit you down and like your job is to digest the information that you're handed by an arbitrary authority. And students are frustrated by that, but they don't really know that there's another way. But I went to a project-based high school where you would just choose a problem you wanted to solve or big question you wanted to answer. You design the project, and then you'd apply for credit based on what you did. And so with that mindset, it's like it taught me how to like pick a 2-month thing. Like a comedy show is like 2 months. Like what would it take? Well, what are the ingredients? Are those doable? What help do you need? Put it together, do it, see it through. Like I don't see through a lot of projects actually still, but I think that's really important, like for education to start shifting in that direction where they let people think for themselves, explore, and just try something.
I'm glad you said that, because I've never really had a lot of respect for that system, or like for the way that school does things, and that increases it a lot for me. Like that's a really good example of like how that sort of odd learning environment really benefited you and the way that you look at the world and look at what's possible in the world.
Yeah.
That's really big.
Well, and that's an example of how cynical we are, because like I went to such a unique school, but we kind of just joke around about it like it wasn't a real school. And it wasn't a real school in a lot of ways. Like
they didn't teach you how to read or anything, but but I think it's cool that you can make a hydroponic weed system now.
Do you have any fucking idea how many kids did a
lot of them. A lot of them.
That's hilarious. But I was at brunch the other day with Brooke, and the server was from Phoenix, and she said something about it being a dumb kid school, and I was like, "You're tripping!" Like, no, it wasn't. Like,
it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. Like they took students from all over, all spectrums.
Right.
And IQ, interest in project-based learning specifically. Kids of different ages, different grades, different. You're ahead of schedule. You're behind schedule. They had a mixed bag, and
for sure, yeah. People view it like a bad kid school, like you got kicked out of all the other schools kind of school.
Right.
Like that's a common misconception. It seems like.
Right. You actually have to apply, and it's not like Delta, which is a science, technology, engineering, math school out here in the Tri-Cities, where it's a lottery system, and it's also not like New Horizons or Legacy, where it's like, hey, you either need an accommodating environment, or you need an environment that's willing to put up with your behavioral problems because you've had an issue somewhere else. It's not either of those. You apply and you get selected, but they don't select you on like intellect, by your IQ and emotional intelligence, or like test scores or something like that. They're just looking for a mixed bag. But anyway, that's a great move. Like, because also for every project, you had to communicate with someone in the community. You had to have a community partner on every project.
Yeah.
So I don't have a problem just calling someone and being like, hey, what do you think about this or this? Like, no worries if not. And a lot of the time people are flattered just to have someone reach out and ask something, because people are bored.
Dude, yeah. That's so important. Yeah, people are so uncomfortable. They'll know they'll know something they want to get done, and there's ways that you could get leads on how to find people that would know this answer, but people are uncomfortable to ask those questions because they don't. Well, I guess they're afraid of looking stupid, or
and they
looking
will.
like a nuisance.
Yeah, they'll look stupid sometimes. Yeah, they will.
Yeah.
They will.
Yeah. Phoenix High School. I don't even think we said the name.
Yeah, Phoenix High School. Project-based education, if you want to look into that.
Yeah. Making assumptions in our relationships is really asking for problems. Often we make the assumption that our partners know what we think and that we don't have to say what we want. We assume they are going to do what we want because they know us so well. If they don't do what we assume they should do, we feel so hurt and say, "You should have known."
That's hilarious.
Pretty classic.
Yeah, we all do.
We make the assumption that everyone sees life the way we do. We assume that others think the way we think, feel the way we feel, judge the way we judge, and abuse the way we abuse. Find your voice to ask for what you want. Everybody has the right to tell you no or yes, but you always have the right to ask. Likewise, everybody has the right to ask you, and you have the right to say yes or no.
That's dead on what we just talked about.
Very similar.
Yeah.
And I really like that in that there's been times recently where people were repeatedly saying that they didn't have any choice, that they I had to do this for my job. Anybody can ask you to do anything, and you can always say no. You never have to do anything.
Right.
There's consequences, like at the extreme that you could there could be the threat of death or something like that. But you always have a choice. You can always say no to any request that someone asks of you.
Right.
And I think people have gotten very uncomfortable. No, I shouldn't say it like that. People are uncomfortable with saying no. That's a very common problem. People don't like to be the difficult one. And you need to be willing to be.
Yeah.
It's much better for you. Or else you're going to be living lies. Or else you're going to be doing things, you're going to be using your word impeccably on some level if you're just saying yes, even though you think the answer should be no.
Yeah.
Yeah. With clear communication, all of your relationships will change, not only with your partner, but with everyone else. You won't need to make assumptions because everything becomes so clear. This is what I want. This is what you want. If we communicate in this way, our word becomes impeccable. If all humans could communicate in this way, with impeccability of the word, there would be no wars, no violence, no misunderstandings. All human problems would be resolved if we could just have good, clear communication. I've thought that a lot, like just how much it's like everything. If we all completely understood each other, there'd just be no problem. Like if we all understood, there'd be no issues at all because we would all see how we can balance out our needs and wants and whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I've been noticing recently as me and Brooke have been like going to counseling and talking about different ways to communicate and stuff is it's so like I can say anything in the world if I say it with love. If I say it, like anything, if I say it with a lighthearted love in my voice, I can say like it pisses me off so much when you do that thing that you do every day. But if I'm saying it like love, I'm like, I love you. And I'm laughing while I say it because I know it ultimately is not a big deal. But it pisses me off so much. It always lands fine. And the most minor thing said in a tone that's not loving just lands like every time. Yeah. And it just blows my mind that the kind of shit that you can say if it's honest and you're saying it with love and almost a humorous, lighthearted kind of love.
Right.
Especially with your partner, and I think especially with a woman. Like they're more worried about the tone.
Absolutely.
Like it's incredible the magic of the things that you can clarify and the needs you can communicate and the pet peeves you can get rid of and just a million things that you can do if you speak with love.
Yeah. And like anything can be funny. Like you can find kind of a humor in any shitty thought.
Right.
It's there somewhere.
Sometimes the shittier it is, the funnier it is. Like,
often.
Like, hey, we just wasted our whole afternoon on something that we didn't need to do. Like, hey, we just wasted a year of our life on something we didn't need to do. It's like the worse it is, the funnier it is in some cases.
Yeah. Yeah. After many repetitions, these new agreements will become second nature, and you will see how the magic of your word transforms you from a black magician into a white magician. A white magician uses the word for creation, giving, sharing, and loving. By making this one agreement a habit, your whole life will be completely transformed. When you transform your whole dream, magic just happens in your life. What you need comes to you easily because spirit moves freely through you. This is the mastery of intent, the mastery of the spirit, the mastery of love, the mastery of gratitude, and the mastery of life. This is the goal of the Toltec. This is the path to personal freedom. I think I missed one that I really wanted to share here. Okay, so this book doesn't really go very woo-woo for most of it. It does like portray your word as magic, but I think for the vast majority of people that read this book, they would not take that literally at all. They would just take that as an understandable metaphor, a useful metaphor. This part was just so explicitly spiritual, though, that it really like took me out of it. Even the opinions you have about yourself are not necessarily true. Therefore, you don't need to take whatever you hear in your own mind personally. The mind has the ability to talk to itself, but it also has the ability to hear information that is available from other realms. Sometimes you hear a voice in your mind, and you may wonder where it came from. This voice may have come from another reality, in which there are living beings very similar to the human mind. The Toltecs called these beings allies. In Europe, Africa, and India, they called them the gods. Our mind also exists in the level of the gods. Our mind also lives in that reality and can perceive that reality. The mind sees with the eyes and perceives this waking reality, but the mind also sees and perceives without the eyes, although the reason is hardly aware of this perception. The mind lives in more than one dimension. There may be times when you have ideas that don't originate in your mind, but you're perceiving them with your mind. You have the right to believe or not believe these voices, and the right not to take what they say personally. We have a choice whether or not to believe the voices we hear within our own minds. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
He's saying even if you hear like a disembodied spirit talking to you, don't take that personally either. It's just such an interesting little nod to the fact that he believes that that's literally a possibility. And in case you do hear one of those, don't take it too personally. And I also think I think I want people to be more aware of the possibility that this can happen, that there are things that are not humans that are intelligent and can communicate with us. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's like people, when they hear these sorts of voices, they believe them more because they're not human. And that really doesn't make very much sense. Like, okay, yeah, there's someone talking to you. I believe you, but what makes you so sure that that person is telling you the truth any more than a human person?
Because they've been fed a paradigm that's so materialist. If anything happens outside of that paradigm, it's the most important thing in the world.
Yeah, and I guess I want to talk about. I've made an effort to try and like just talk about those things more openly. That like, oh yeah, there's literally like, yeah, sure, a spirit or something like that. Because I don't want it to be as interesting, because then more people will not respect them so much, because they don't deserve more. Their word does not deserve more respect than human word does.
And their existence isn't more fascinating or miraculous than ours.
Not really. Kind of worse. They don't have a body. We've got a spirit and a body. Like, we're kind of better. But so if you meet a spirit, don't take what they're saying personally. And this is my own thing, but don't believe everything they say, because they just are. They're not that different from you.
Right.
Yeah. Onion rings? That does smell like onion rings.
I smell onion rings, yeah. But you shouldn't make assumptions.
That could be car grease. That's true. Dumped in the street.
Easily. It could be David fell in a barrel again.
He's always in the barrel. He could be climbing up this roof right now. He's going to shimmy in here. Right, because I had to go back a little bit here. Okay, fourth agreement. Always do your best. Under any circumstance, always do your best. No more and no less. But keep in mind that your best is never going to be the same from one moment to the next. Everything is alive and changing all the time, so your best will sometimes be high quality and other times will not be as good. When you overdo, you deplete your body and go against yourself, and it will take you longer to accomplish your goal. But if you do less than your best, you subject yourself to frustrations, self-judgment, guilt, and regrets. There was a man who wanted to transcend his suffering, so he went to a Buddhist temple to find a master to help him. He went to the master and asked, "Master, if I meditate 4 hours a day, how long will it take me to transcend?" The master looked at him and said, "If you meditate 4 hours a day, perhaps you will transcend in 10 years. Thinking he could do better, the man then said, "Oh, master, what if I meditated 8 hours a day? How long will it take me to transcend?" The master looked at him and said, "If you meditate 8 hours a day, perhaps you will transcend in 20 years. "But why will it take me longer if I meditate more?" the man asked. The master replied, "You are not here to sacrifice your joy or your life. You are here to live, to be happy, and to love. If you can do your best in 2 hours of meditation, but you spend 8 hours instead, you will find you will only grow tired, miss the point, and you won't enjoy your life. Do your best, and perhaps you will learn that no matter how long you meditate, you can live, love, and be happy." I like that. Burnout's a thing, and overdoing it is as much a problem as not doing enough.
Right.
Although this rule certainly has a lot more wiggle room, and a lot more room for justification, a lot more room for laziness or for compulsive overdoing it if you're someone wired to be more that way. But you can give yourself too much of an out if you're like, hey, if I'm not feeling it, I just shouldn't push myself today.
I that's my best. My best is nothing.
Because
yeah,
I don't really want to do a lot most days. But
this book is really a plea for individual integrity, because he's like, you don't go against your own instincts. Don't go against your own standard for what is right. Don't do less than you could. It's like you,
right?
Because a lot of what people try to do with religion is like externalize responsibility and blame for their own thoughts, words, and actions. Like people go to church and like, hey, can you pray for me to stop watching pornography? Mm-hmm. Like, not really. or like, can this book tell me what's right and what's wrong, so that I can just take the 8 rules that I pluck out of this, and as long as I follow those, I can pretend I have a clear conscience. But the honest answers are like, right or wrong. Like,
right.
Here's some guidelines that you can use to determine for yourself what is right or wrong, because a book or another person or whatever is not going to do that for you. That's not realistic. I'm not going to take that off of your shoulders. That's yours. You know what I mean?
Totally. Yeah. And because this is the 4th rule, assume you should be being impeccable with your word, also with yourself. So you should have an understanding of when you're lying to yourself and when you're being kind to yourself. Mm-hmm. Although that does feel like it can be blurry, although I'm a liar sometimes. So I guess I'm not there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
God is life. God is in action. The best way to say, I love you, God, is to live your life doing your best. The best way to say, thank you, God, is by letting go of the past and living in the present moment, right here and now. Whatever life takes away from you, let it go. When you surrender and let go of the past, you allow yourself to be fully alive in the moment. Letting go of the past means you can enjoy the dream that is happening right now. I wanted to highlight that part because of how closely it relates to The Power of Now.
Every book you read lately says here and now.
There's been a lot of that. A lot of like that. A lot of the trick to being happy is to not be living in the past or in the future, and to be here now, as Ram Dass would say. And it feels true to me, and I just wanted to highlight that. Again, there's another example of a wise man saying that.
Yeah.
It feels.
I think you and I both have needed that advice lately.
I think so.
I feel like I have needed it,
really
especially
good.
lately.
Yeah. The first 3 agreements will only work if you do your best. Don't expect that you will always be able to be impeccable with your word. Your routine habits are too strong and firmly rooted in your mind, but you can do your best. Don't expect that you will never take anything personally. Just do your best. Don't expect that you will never make another assumption, but you can certainly do your best. You need to be a great hunter, a great warrior who can defend these 4 agreements with your life. Your happiness, your freedom, your entire way of living depends on it. The warrior's goal is to transcend this world, to escape from this hell and never come back. As the Toltecs teach us, the reward is to transcend the human experience of suffering, to become the embodiment of God. That is the reward. I thought that was just really cool description of like enlightenment as like a spiritual war to get out of the matrix or whatever it is that we're doing here.
Right.
Yeah. So if you fall, do not judge. Do not give your judge the satisfaction of turning you into a victim. No, be tough with yourself. Stand up and make the agreement again. Okay, I broke my agreement to be impeccable with my word. I will start all over again. I'm going to keep the 4 agreements just for today. Today, I will be impeccable with my word. I will not take anything personally. I will not make any assumptions, and I'm going to do my best. I wanted to highlight that just because of how closely it relates with NA and the just for today message.
Yeah.
Because that's all you can do.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one more chapter here with a few sections I want to read. But we are through the chapters that are about the agreements themselves. If we see a child who is 2 or 3, perhaps 4 years old, we find a free human. Why is this human free? Because this human does whatever he or she wants to do. The human is completely wild, just like a flower, a tree, or an animal that has not been domesticated. Wild. And if we observe humans who are 2 years old, we find that most of the time these humans have a big smile on their face, and they're having fun. They are exploring the world. They are not afraid to play. They are afraid when they are hurt, when they are hungry, when some of their needs are not met. But they don't worry about the past, don't care about the future, and only live in the present moment. As I was reading that, I had a thought. People start making memories around the time they're like 4 or 5. Like, I wonder how much that lines up with just starting to be domesticated. Is your domestication when you start feeling like, okay, I need to have like a record of what happens because going forward, this data is going to be important. Whereas before that, you're just barely even thinking about the past,
right,
or the future, except to the extent that it affects your immediate present.
Right.
If you're hungry, you need to remember, like, how is it that I usually get food? How do I usually satisfy this feeling?
Yeah.
And then you access that for only that moment. Like, maybe that's
a really good thought.
There could be a relationship between the starting to collect memories in your head and stopping living in the present and letting yourself become domesticated. There could be a link there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
To be Toltec is a way of life. It is a way of life where there are no leaders and no followers, where you have your own truth and live your own truth. A Toltec becomes wise, becomes wild, and becomes free again. I like the idea of wildness being attached with freedom. Like, getting rid of your domestication is becoming free. Although that's not a new thought in this book. I just really like that.
Yeah.
One function of the brain is to transform material energy into emotional energy. Our brain is the factory of the emotions, and we have said that the main function of the mind is to dream. The Toltecs believe that the parasite, the judge, the victim, and the belief system, has control of your mind. It controls your personal dream. The parasite dreams through your mind and lives its life through your body. It survives on the emotions that come from fear and thrives on drama and suffering. I wanted to highlight that because of how similar it is to Eckhart Tolle's idea about the pain body.
Yeah.
And like this negative force that's in you that wants to feed on negativity and tries to drive you to that for its own satisfaction. Just like when I'm angry, I don't want to stop being angry in that moment.
Right.
Because it's the anger that's driving.
Right.
Yeah.
And that, like, it's the anger that wants to continue feeling angry.
Yeah. It feels righteous and it likes itself in the moment. It likes its righteous feeling, assuming I'm angry about something righteous, which I'm always convinced I am.
But of course. Yeah, while you're
really
angry.
am.
Nobody who's angry is like at the same, like their anger does not admit that it might not be the best reason to be angry while they're angry. That just doesn't happen. Like,
right.
You just have to ride that out until the real you is back at the steering wheel.
Right. And sometimes I'm there, but I'm just, it's like, what flashed into my head was the sunken place in Get Out.
Yeah.
Where he's like, in Get Out, he ends up being pushed down into like a dark place and he's not even in control of his body. And anger can feel like that sometimes, where I might even be capable, if I'm angry, if I was like yelling at somebody and you said to me in the moment, like, hey, you don't want to be angry, I might be like, I fucking know that, but fuck you, not right now, and just like keep going. Like, I might verbally acknowledge
I
from
agree.
deep in there that, like, you are right. I know you're right, but I don't care. That's not what we're doing.
I agree.
Yeah. That is why in all the shamanic traditions in America, from Canada to Argentina, people call themselves warriors because they are in a war against the parasite in the mind. That is the real meaning of a warrior. The warrior is the one who rebels against the invasion of the parasite. The warrior rebels and declares a war. But to be a warrior doesn't mean we always win the war. We may win or we may lose, but we always do our best, and at least we have a chance to be free again. Choosing this path gives us, at the very least, the dignity of rebellion, and ensures that we will not be the helpless victim of our own whimsical emotions or the poisonous emotions of others. Even if we succumb to the enemy, the parasite, we will not be among the victims who would not fight back. I thought that was pretty hard. I really like the idea of the dignity of rebellion. I think that's a very cool phrase.
Yeah. He's doing something really integrating, which is allowing the inner rebel in you, which wants to sin, to use its energy to sin against sin by rebelling for the sake of righteousness. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Rage against the machine.
Right. Yeah. You got to rage against something, right? Rage against rage.
Rage against rage. Sure. Why not? The final way to attain personal freedom is to prepare ourselves for the initiation of the dead, to take death itself as our teacher. What the angel of death can teach us is how to be truly alive. We become aware that we can die at any moment. We have just the present to be alive. The truth is that we don't know if we are going to die tomorrow. Who knows? We have no idea that we have many years in the future, but do we? The angel of death can teach us to live every day as if it is the last day of our lives, as if there may be no tomorrow. We can begin each day by saying, I am awake, I see the sun. I am going to give my gratitude to the sun and to everything and everyone, because I'm still alive. One more day to be myself. It's a very nice message, and I listened to a podcast recently with Don Miguel Ruiz, and he was describing a recent... Now, this would have been like at least 10 years after the publishing of this book, but a recent near-death experience that he had where he was in the middle of a heart attack, called 911, but then immediately called his manager and asked him to gather his family around because he wants to show them the right way to die. That he asked his manager to gather his whole family to come to the hospital because he's on his way out and he wants them to be there for it. And to show them how to do it gracefully.
This was him?
This was him, yeah.
That's hard.
He survived. He didn't end up dying that day, but he was able to tell that story on the podcast, and it was very cool. That's a very cool guy way to go out if he does go out that way. I don't know if he's dead now. I'm not sure.
No.
You say no?
Oh, he's still around.
Cool. Good for him.
Yeah, pretty sure. Yeah, I second guess myself as soon as
Don Miguel Ruiz.
Don Miguel Ruiz.
Yeah.
Ruiz.
He is an Eagle Knight.
Ruiz.
He's a Nagual of the Eagle Knight lineage. Type that in there too.
Wait.
He's got a son who's a hack.
Oh,
Just kidding.
He's alive. 69 years.
Nice.
69 years old.
Author of Toltec spiritualist. This is Wikipedia.
Nice. Okay.
Wikipedia is full of dorks these days.
This guy's still not dead.
Don Miguel Ruiz is a pseudo-psychologist. Those fucking nerds. Aubrey Marcus on his podcast, he was talking to... So he was interviewing this guy I really like. His name was Matthias De Stefano. And he just mentioned to him that of all of the spiritual masters or whatever that he's gone to meet on his journey with his podcast, the person he's met who had the most holy presence was Don Miguel Ruiz. That he greeted him like he already knew him and missed him and liked him. And Aubrey Marcus has made a career out of interviewing people of that nature. So that was a high compliment coming from him.
For sure. Yeah. Well, cool. Those were all the quotes that I had from there. I don't know if I have anything else specific I want to share. Do you have any thoughts about it, or? No.
No.
Okay. Well, thank you, Mom, for the recommendation.
Thanks, Mom.
Sorry it took me so long to read it, but it's very good, and I definitely recommend if anyone. I recommend people read it because you can do it in 2 hours if you push.
Yeah, it's a great book. It's a great book, man. It's so practical because it's there's a lot of people who are hungry for some kind of ancient wisdom and are for such good reason weary about where the hell to get it from.
Sure.
And this is such a good option for anyone. Like the couple of metaphysical or spiritual implications in it can be brushed over by someone who has a more materialistic view. And that's fine if that's your view, but this is a good place to get wisdom in a way that's pretty non-sectarian, you know?
Totally.
And
yeah.
it's pretty safe and it's so accessible and there's spirituality to it, but it's also really grounded, personal, ethical advice.
Yeah. There is some like real spirituality, that at least what he would call real spirituality mixed in there. Although it is something that you could tune out if it's not something that you're particularly interested in, and just look at this as a self-help book that is practically useful.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Don Miguel Ruiz. Thank you, Mom. And night school.
Love you, Mom. Night school.
Love you.